a legal document across the table and gave me a heartless ultimatum. Sign the adoption papers and give up your baby, or pack your bags and get disowned. I chose my unborn child. They threw me out into the freezing snow that very night, cutting me off completely. For years, they treated me like I was dead. But exactly 20 years after that toxic dynamic began, my parents and my brother swaggered into a courtroom, smirking like they'd already won. They were suing to seize my late grandmother's house and the $680,000 cash she secretly left to me. They thought I was still that helpless, broken teenager. But their smirks instantly vanished, and their expensive lawyer turned completely pale when he looked at me and said, "Good morning, prosecutor." Follow my story until the end to see how the tables turned. My name is Violet, and I am 28 years old. To look at me now, you would see a confident woman who stands tall, but 10 years ago, I was just a terrified 18-year-old college freshman whose entire world had just collapsed. I had just found out I was pregnant, completely alone, and desperate for the comfort of my family. It was Christmas Eve when I finally gathered the courage to tell them, foolishly hoping for a shred of maternal warmth or paternal guidance. Instead, I walked right into a calculated ambush. The dining room table was pristine, glittering with expensive silver and crystal, reflecting the cold, upper-class perfection my parents worshipped. My father sat at the head of the table like a judge, while my mother and my golden boy brother, Julian, sat in silent alignment beside him. The festive holiday music playing softly in the background felt like a cruel joke. Before the main course was even served, my father didn't offer a hug or a word of reassurance. Instead, he smoothly slid a thick manila folder across the mahogany wood. Inside were pre-drafted, ironclad adoption papers. They demanded I sign away my parental rights immediately, hiding my pregnancy away like a dirty secret to protect what they called the family brand. When I looked them in the eye and refused to give up my child, my father's face hardened into stone. On the spot, he declared I was no longer his daughter. They forced me to pack a single backpack and threw me out into the freezing winter night without a single dollar. Walking out of that house into the freezing night was the moment my childhood ended and the brutal reality of survival began. Raising my daughter, Lily, as an 18-year-old single mother meant my life became a blur of endless exhaustion. For the next several years, I worked 2 grueling jobs, scrubbing floors at a local diner by morning and typing data entries late into the night. Every spare penny I scraped together went toward buying Lily's diapers, while I survived on instant noodles and pure determination. I put myself through night school, and eventually, against every single statistic stacked against me, I fought my way into law school. I did it all with zero help from my parents or Julian, who had completely erased me from their lives. But I wasn't entirely alone in the dark. The only family member who refused to abandon me was my maternal grandmother, Eleanor. Grandma Eleanor was a fierce, proud woman who absolutely despised my parents' cruelty. Because my controlling father monitored her finances, she couldn't openly fund my life without starting a massive family war, but she supported me quietly. She would secretly slip away to visit my cramped apartment, bringing home-cooked meals, rocking baby Lily to sleep, and constantly whispering that I was smarter and stronger than the monsters who threw me out. She kept our bond completely hidden from her son to protect our peace. Before I tell you the shocking thing Grandma Eleanor did right before you are watching from, let's see how far Violet's triumph has reached. Time passed, and the grueling years of studying while raising Lily finally paid off. I graduated at the top of my law class, securing a position that would change our lives forever. But just as the sun was finally beginning to shine on our little family, a devastating darkness struck. Grandma Eleanor, my fiercest protector and my only remaining tie to my past, passed away peacefully in her sleep. The grief was a physical weight in my chest. I didn't even attend the formal family funeral, knowing my parents and Julian would only use the solemn occasion to sneer at me or make a public scene. A week after she was laid to rest, my phone rang. It wasn't my family, but a prestigious estate lawyer from a completely different firm than the one my father always used. He requested my presence for a private reading of Eleanor's final will and testament. When I walked into his quiet, wood-paneled office, the lawyer handed me a certified document that left me absolutely breathless. Grandma Eleanor hadn't just left me a few sentimental family heirlooms. She had secretly bypassed my father completely, leaving me her historic estate, valued at over $1 million, along with a liquid trust containing exactly $680,000 in cash. The most stunning part of the document was a specific clause written in Eleanor's own sharp handwriting. The will explicitly stated that my parents and Julian were to receive exactly $1 each. She wrote that they had legally and morally forfeited their right to the family lineage on that cold Christmas night 10 years ago. For 10 long years, my parents and my brother treated me like an absolute ghost. They never checked to see if my daughter and I were starving, nor did they care if we had a roof over our heads. But greed has a funny way of resurrecting dead relationships. Less than 48 hours after Grandma Eleanor's will was made public, the heavy silence of a decade was broken. I was sitting in my modest apartment, helping Lily with her homework, when a loud, aggressive knock echoed through the front door. When I opened it, I found myself staring at the three people who had discarded me. My mother immediately tried to force a trembling, emotional smile, while Julian and my father stepped into my living room without even being invited inside. The false kindness dripping from their voices was utterly nauseating. Julian awkwardly patted my shoulder, smoothly telling me that life was too short to hold onto old grudges and that we needed to move past the past because we are still a family. It didn't take long for the real truth to slip out behind their synthetic affection. Julian had completely ruined his own consulting company and was drowning in massive business debts. They desperately needed Grandma Eleanor's historic estate to liquidate it and save Julian from financial ruin. When I calmly stood my ground and told them to leave my home, my father's fake warmth instantly evaporated into familiar rage. He pointed a finger at me, screaming that Grandma Eleanor was completely senile when she signed that final will. He threatened to drag me through the mud in probate court, swearing that a judge would easily strip the inheritance away from a disgraceful, unwed mother. The morning of the probate hearing arrived, draped in the heavy, sterile gray of the county courthouse. Walking down those marble corridors, I could feel the weight of the last 10 years pressing against my shoulders, but I didn't let my stride falter. I adjusted the sharp, dark lapels of my tailored blazer and pushed open the heavy oak doors of courtroom 3B. They were already there, dominating the left side of the polished mahogany tables. My parents and Julian sat shoulder to shoulder, looking like a portrait of old money arrogance. Sitting next to them was an older man in a bespoke three-piece suit, Marcus Vance, a notoriously aggressive, high-priced defense attorney known for steamrolling anyone who got in his client's way. As I took my seat at the opposite table completely alone, Julian looked over at me and let a slow, mocking smirk spread across his face. He leaned over to my father, whispering something that made my mother offer a cold, satisfied nod. They thought I was completely outmatched. In their eyes, I was still that broke, helpless teenager they had abandoned in the snow, a desperate single mother who probably couldn't even afford a real lawyer to defend her inheritance. They had brought a thick, intimidating binder filled with fabricated medical notes from a shady private clinic, all carefully designed to paint Grandma Eleanor as mentally incompetent and suffering from severe dementia during her final months. They genuinely believed they were about to walk out of this courtroom with my grandmother's house and the $680,000 cash, leaving me with absolutely nothing. The pure confidence radiating from their side of the room was suffocating. They thought the game was already over before the judge even took the bench. The heavy oak doors at the front of the room swung open, and the bailiff called the court to order. Judge Harrison stepped onto the bench, his expressions unreadable as he glanced down at the morning's docket. But before the judge could even clear his throat to initiate the proceedings, the high-priced defense attorney, Marcus Vance, stood up to present his initial appearance paperwork. He turned around to cast a final, patronizing glance toward my table, confidently expecting to see a trembling, unrepresented young woman. Instead, his eyes locked onto my face, and the arrogant smile instantly vanished from his lips. The color completely drained from his face, leaving him a sickly shade of gray. He dropped his expensive gold pen and it clattered loudly against the hardwood floor, echoing through the dead-silent room. My parents and Julian watched in utter confusion as their unstoppable, ruthless lawyer suddenly bowed his head slightly toward me, his voice trembling with forced professional reverence. "Good morning, prosecutor," he stammered, his hands visibly shaking as he gripped the edge of the mahogany table. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. My father gripped the armrests of his chair, while Julian's mouth hung open in absolute shock. They had no idea that while they were spending the last several years enjoying their artificial lifestyle, I had climbed the ranks to become the newly appointed state prosecutor for this entire county. Even worse for them, Vance recognized me because my office was currently spearheading an active grand jury investigation into Julian's corporate shell companies for wire fraud and embezzlement. I wasn't just defending my grandmother's inheritance. I had brought ironclad, certified state medical records proving Eleanor's flawless cognitive health, destroying their lies. Judge Harrison didn't need to hear much more after that. He took one look at the certified medical records I provided, completely exposing my parents' fabricated evidence, and dismissed their frivolous lawsuit with prejudice. He didn't stop there. The judge ordered my father to pay every single dollar of my legal fees. As the gavel struck the sounding block, the finality of the sound echoed through the room. Julian's face remained frozen in horror as two plainclothes investigators from my office stepped forward to serve him with a formal court order, freezing his remaining corporate assets for the ongoing fraud investigation. The aftermath was swift and devastating for them. Without Grandma Eleanor's estate to bail him out, Julian's fraudulent business completely collapsed, and he was forced to move back into our parents' house. To cover his massive debts and avoid immediate prison time, my parents had to downsize significantly, selling their pristine suburban home and living a life dictated by the financial ruin they brought upon themselves. Meanwhile, Lily and I moved into Grandma Eleanor's beautiful historic house, filling the rooms with laughter and love instead of greed. I didn't keep all that money for myself, though. Using the $680,000 cash trust, I established the Eleanor Foundation, a local organization dedicated to providing legal aid, housing, and financial education to young single mothers facing homelessness. They tried to leave me with absolutely nothing on that cold Christmas night, but they ended up losing everything. What would you have done if your family's below? Don't go anywhere. Click on the 2 videos on your screen right now for more incredible stories that will